Hello, Pia. Thank you very much for taking this invitation. How are you?
Fine. Thank you. Thank you for doing this and for having me. Very exciting project.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very excited to get to know a little bit more about the country that I've been living in for the past, I don't know, 15 months or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting. So you are from a city called Aachen, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about the city and or where it is located or how it is like related to the other parts of Germany?
Sure. A few things I like to talk more about than my hometown.
Really?
It's in the very, very west of Germany.
Yeah.
So it's at right on the border, basically, to the Netherlands and Belgium. And I think the entire city is shaped a lot by that because you have like buses going from the city center to other cities like in Belgium or in the Netherlands. And so you will always like be surrounded by people who speak Dutch or whatever, not German. And you growing up there, I think you can't help but notice like all the advantages that come with the European Union and open borders, that you can just, take a walk. And at some point you're going to wonder in which country you are, but because there are no physical borders. So that shapes the city a lot. Otherwise, it's a very, very old city. It's rather small. It's got like 250,000 people living there, a little less. And But it's very old, and like the Romans already went there, and it got very famous for its hot springs. And to this day, they're like famous. Like baths, and people come there if they're sick. And
Like inside the city, like different
yes,
bathing
yeah,
facilities?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And they have this like naturally hot water. It's kind of ironic because the Romans called it like a city of water. Oops, I can't this. And there's actually like there's no lake, there's no river, nothing that you can see, but under the ground, like there's a lot of these hot springs. So that's what it's famous for. It's got a very old cathedral, um, and it was the city where the emperors like were crowned like a long, long time ago. So yeah, especially one emperor or yeah, emperor, lived there and made it kind of famous. And so it's this very old city, I would say, very small, very nice. And today we have a horse festival there, like a horse riding competition. That's very cool, and there is a prize for European unity that they award each year, and so those are like two occasions where a lot of people from all around the world come to Aachen. And also we have a very, very cute Christmas market.
So right now it's a very special season in your town.
So yeah, 10 out of 10 can recommend.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna have to visit it soon because I haven't been in the part of Germany actually.
Oh right, so it's in the very west. It's called Rhineland. And that's a part of Germany where there are a lot of cities, like a lot of old cities. You have Cologne, you have Bonn, which was the former capital of Germany before it was reunited. And you have like Düsseldorf, and then the Ruhrgebiet with many, many other cities. So it's in the state where the state has like 17 million people living there, so it's the biggest state in Germany. And yeah, it's also very much shaped by this, like that there are so many people just living there.
So there's a mixture of like small towns or smaller cities and also like these bigger metropolitan areas like the one in Cologne and Düsseldorf and all of those. Interesting. And apart from that, what would you say the main cities in Germany are? I mean, obviously Berlin, but I also think that Germany is not like a country that is that centralized. I think that it has like many different like important cities in different regards, right? Like maybe Berlin is the most important one in the political sense because obviously it's the capital city. But yeah, I have the feeling that there are some other very important cities around.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we have 4 cities that have more than 1 million people living there, which are Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, and Cologne. And those, if you think about it, like Berlin is pretty much in the east of Germany, Munich is very much in the south, Hamburg is very much in the north, and Cologne is very much in the west.
So they count all the way around.
Yeah. So those, I think those are, it's maybe a little boring to say the biggest cities are the most important ones, but I would say definitely those are like core cities in Germany. They all represent something slightly different. And then, as I said, you have this kind of metropolitan area in the west of Germany where like Cologne is a very historic city, so is Munich, obviously. So yeah, those cities have a lot of history. Then, as I said, you have Bonn, which used to be the capital. But I don't think it's that important anymore, but it used to be important. I would say they're all similar in the sense that they're all big cities and they all have a very impressive history to them, and they all have like cultural things going on, but like different stereotypes. And Munich, for example, is in the south of Germany where you have a lot of nature around. I mean, you have this big city, but I think it's probably more well known for like the nature around Munich, for example, that and other cities like Cologne and Berlin. Maybe Berlin is this city that is pretty much in the middle of nowhere, I feel. Cologne is the city surrounded by other cities, so
and countries even, right? Like
and countries,
like close to Belgium and Netherlands.
Right. So yeah, there are differences, but I would, and Frankfurt
like more in the center. Right?
More in the center, yeah, right. Actually, yeah, that's more in the center. That was what was missing on the map. So
on the overview of the German map. Yeah. And now that you're mentioning like the different stereotypes of the different cities, what would you say are the main, or what would you say the main stereotypes for Germany are? Like when you say you are German, that you come from Germany, what do people outside of Germany or people that come from other countries think about when you hear that?
I'm not sure, but like what the stereotype is that Germans think other, like the stereotype is definitely that Germans are always on time, very punctual, that they are very much abiding to the rules, whatever rules. It's very important to just abide to the rules, no matter if that's useful or makes sense or not. You know, you just stick to the rules. And then maybe that we're pretty straightforward, maybe like direct in the way we talk to other people. Also, we are not overly polite, I would say, or like overly warm to other people. Like it's more sticking to yourself and the people that you know very well. And then I think there are a lot of like stereotypes that are not. I think those are the stereotypes that people from abroad hold over Germany, even though that's mostly stereotypes that are coming from Bavaria, like from the south of Germany. Like I think if you ask people about Germany, everyone talks about Oktoberfest and like those Lederhosen and beer and stuff. I mean, beer is a thing in Germany in general, but like Oktoberfest and everything that comes with that is very Bavarian. And if you ask people outside of Bavaria in Germany, they are probably not going to fulfill that stereotype.
But what do you think about like this way of looking at Germany? Like, would you say, for example, the punctuality is true? Would you say like the strictness in following the rules is true?
I think, I mean, no, I know a lot of people who are not on time, me included. But I think it's like maybe if you look at it compared to other people,
Latins,
maybe
for example.
I think there's just this. What is true, I think, in general, is this understanding that if you meet with someone at, I don't know, 3:00, you're going to be there at 3:00. And if you're like 2 minutes early, you're going to wait in front of the door until it's 3:00. but then like the understanding is that you're supposed to be there at 3, and now you can be late a couple of minutes, but if you are, you will feel bad about it. Like it's not this, okay, we say 3 and we mean like around 3 o'clock.
Yeah, because sometimes, for example, I think for the Latin culture, sometimes we say that we're gonna meet like at 3. I mean, depending on the situation, maybe a more formal thing, you mean at 3. But if you mean like a party, or if you mean like a gathering, something like that, 3 means like it may start at 3, but you can come like at 3:30, you can come like at 3:40, or like, it's just like the starting time, but not necessarily like exactly 3 o'clock. And like I also, like at first I found it funny that people like used to, like if we had I don't know, schedule a dinner or something like that with someone from Germany, and I found it funny, like they were always like sorry that they were like 2 minutes late or 3 minutes late. They even send messages like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna be there like 3 minutes late. And you're like, I mean, it's fine. So I find that interesting.
So I think not in the sense that we're actually always on time, but in the sense that we value being on time, or like we feel bad.
That's a very good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, that's, I think, true in that sense. Sticking to the rules, yes. Yes, definitely. Yes. I mean, that's not to say that there are not people who break the rules, obviously, but in general, I think we have, like, for example, if you have a traffic light, I mean, in Berlin, it's slightly different, but in general, if there is a traffic light and and the traffic light is red, and there's absolutely no car inside, you are still going to wait for the traffic light to switch to green, because that's just the rule.
Like that's what you have to do. Like, why would you cross the street?
Right. So in situations like that, I think it is true that we like our rules.
And you like to follow them.
Yeah.
And I think that is also like part of the stereotype. Like you have like this like order, right, in everything. Like it's everything functions like a big machine. And I mean, I do believe like at some point that's true, but I think it's a good stereotype, like, because sometimes stereotypes tend to be like more towards the negative side, and I think Germany has a lot of positive ones actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are still a lot of Germans who will complain about like bureaucracy and too many unnecessary rules and everything. And everyone always talks about making things more efficient, but then I think in the end we're still a little bit like, but like we do have to have a rule on that, right? Like, how should it work otherwise? I feel like other people are maybe a little more chill about it, and they're like, okay, let's just figure it out in the moment, and Germans tend to be more like, well, what's the rule on that, and then just follow that.
And do you think that can also be related to the language, like the German language, which is also like, I think, very like logical, like it's composed of these like words that go along together, and
that is true.
Because there is a theory that says that sometimes like the personality of communities or societies tend to be related also to the languages that they speak. And I mean, I don't know what comes first, right? Like if the way they behave, and then that's why they create that language, or the other way around, like they have this language and then that makes them behave in a certain way. But I think that that's interesting because, I mean, you obviously speak more German than me, but from the German that I speak, I can see how it is a very logical German language in the way that you just like have these different words that can be together, and instead of having like a whole new word, you just put together 2 or 3 words, and that's why you end up with these super long not sentences, but words, right? So I think it's also interesting to see how that can be related to the personality that is attributed to the
that is a very interesting point. I never thought about that regarding like following rules. But I'm a big believer in the theory that like language shapes how we think and how we act. And I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this stereotype, but like the idea that Germans sound very aggressive when they talk. And I feel like that's related to the language a little. I mean, obviously it's related.
But do you think that's true? To be honest, I mean, I know where the stereotype comes from, but I think, I mean, maybe for someone who speaks like French or Spanish, maybe it does sound like a little bit harsh. But to be honest, it all depends on the accent of the person that is talking to. because
I mean, it's not something that I would have said about the language, I think, but I mean, I grew up here, so I don't
also
really know.
like it comes natural. So.
Yeah, but I have to admit that when other people imitate speaking German, it does sound very aggressive. It's I mean, I think it has to do with history. If you listen to more of the older clips where people speak German, that sounds very aggressive. But like in everyday German today, I don't think it sounds that aggressive.
Yeah.
But I think like the language, as you said, is very clear and precise. I think that might contribute to people communicating in a very like direct way. I don't know. I mean, it's like we have the words to make it that precise. Why should we like talk like around it? Maybe.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned history for a little bit, can you tell me a little bit about like the history that Germany has? And I know that it's like a very dense topic, probably considering like everything that happened, especially like in the 20th century. And I also think that it's very impressive how Germany, like the Germany we know now, has actually been existing for just over 30 years, right? After the reunification.
Yes.
So I find that very interesting, like how the country, like the face of the country changed a lot throughout the 20th century. And I'm just interested in knowing, like, for example, these topics, like how are they approached at school, for example, or how does the perspective in, like related to the 20th century is, what the perspective is from a German point of view, and how the overall German people think about it.
Okay, so
in current times.
So I'm gonna talk more about like 20th century history because I mean the history itself is like so long. I mean, from Roman ancient times through like medieval kingdoms in Germany, to like when Prussia was kind of the leading force in Germany, to like having to like growing more and more unified in the 19th century only, and like having this kingdom, empire, kingdom, whatever, until the First World War, pretty much. And then, of course, turning into a republic after the end of World War One.
That was the Weimar Republic, right? Or was
the Weimar Republic. And that is a very tragic story, actually, because you had this republic and it was like, yes, there were a lot of people who in their hearts were still monarchists, like they still believed in the monarchy, but overall you had a bunch of people who were committed to building a republic and like a democracy, and then it just crashed after, like, I mean, it was founded like in 1918, and the Nazis were elected in the early 1930s, so 12 years basically, and then it completely crashed and gave way to that most shameful chapter in world history, probably. And then after World War II, obviously, I'm gonna get into how people talk about that today, but just like a brief overview. And then after World War II, obviously, the Allied forces from Britain, the US, France, Russia, obviously the Soviet Union at the time, stayed in Germany, and you had later on then West Germany and East Germany. And as you said, it took until 1989, 1990 for Germany to be reunified. And that is the first time in German history that you had a unified Germany that was a democracy, like that you had both this unity and democracy at the same time. And to think about it, that's really crazy. Like, that's not such a long time.
Yeah.
Now, how do we approach history today? I mean, in school, there's definitely a focus on World War II and like not so much the war itself, but like Nazi government leading up to the war. And yeah, that is definitely a focus I've noticed from like how other European countries look back on the 20th century, that there's usually a lot more of a focus on World War One. Like, not that other countries don't talk about World War II, obviously they do, but they also have a strong culture of remembering World War One. And in Germany, World War One kind of gets completely overshadowed by everything that followed. And so in school, you learn so much about the Weimar Republic and about the Nazis' rise to power. I think it's in 8th grade, probably 8th or 9th grade, I'm not entirely sure, where you talk about the Nazis in so many different subjects, like obviously in history, but also in religious classes, and maybe you read a text about it in German class. Like, so many philosophy, it probably comes up, like so many different subjects, and they all talk about how could that possibly have happened. And so I think people are very focused on teaching people at school about like the reasons. I mean, what are the reasons? Probably there's not one precise reason, but like just looking at it and seeing, okay, this might have contributed to it. And so I would say, like, there are a lot of children at school who will at some point go, okay, we've talked about it in 2 other subjects already. Do we really have to talk about it again? Like, I think that is the sentiment that you have. I think nobody questions that it is important to talk about it. And I don't think it's like a taboo topic in public conversation. I think especially if you are abroad, it's not something that you talk about. Like,
Yeah, totally.
I mean, why would that topic just randomly come up? But I don't know, if you're on holiday with little children and maybe there's, I don't know, a memorial in a different country to World War II or something. And then I think parents are always a little hesitant to say words like Nazis or Hitler out loud, because, like, especially if no one understands you, it, can be, I don't know, taken out of context, or other people don't really know that you're just like trying to teach your children something about it. So that is something that I think most Germans are very careful about. But like, within Germany, it's not like, oh, we can't talk about the war because, I don't know, because we can't face that responsibility. I think that used to be the case after World War II, definitely. And you also have to be honest enough to admit that there were a lot of people that were involved in the Nazi government and that were Nazis that stayed in government positions after the war, or you had like teachers, professors at university. There's a famous law professor who, some of them could just continue to teach. So you definitely had that. It wasn't like as much of a like cut, so to speak, after the Nazi government as you would have maybe hoped. I mean, for example, the UK or the other countries in Germany tried to denazify Germany. And they also kind of ran into the problem that, okay, if we're really serious about that, we have to like fire 90% of the people who work for the government. And maybe that was part of the reason why it didn't effectively happen. But then we had the like the student movement of the 60s and 70s, And that's where a lot changed. I mean, you had the student movement, obviously, in many countries around the world, and like focused on peace and anti-Vietnam War protests and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the overall decade of the 60s was very like focused on that, right?
Right.
In terms of what the people were asking for.
Yes, and in Germany, the 60s, like the student movement of the 60s and 70s, was also very much focused on like coming to terms with the Nazi legacy of Germany. It was, that this new generation challenged the older generation to actually finally get rid of all the Nazis that were still in powerful positions. And so I think that whatever you think about the student movement, you cannot deny that it changed how Germany approached that particular time in its history. And so I think today, I mean, you still might have older people who don't want to talk about their personal experience.
Probably because they have like a more personal connection to those times.
Obviously. Right? Like either because they're ashamed or they don't want to admit that they were guilty in some sense. Or, I mean, the people living today still mostly were children during the war. So also, probably just being traumatized plays a role in that. So I hear like from my friends that there are a lot of different experiences. There are some grandparents who talk very openly about their experience during the war. And then there are those who are slightly older, especially, who don't want to talk about it at all. But like as a public conversation to have, I don't think it's a taboo in Germany.
No, and I think it's important because, as you said, it's not a topic that you are going to just talk about out of the blue, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important, and I've seen it especially here in Berlin, which is like a city where a lot happened during those times. You see like all these memorials, all these even destroyed buildings that are kept that way just to remember what happens with war. And I think that's a good approach to take, like maybe not like have it like super on your face, like on your nose, but acknowledging it in some way and telling the new generations about it and why, maybe why it happened, but also why it shouldn't happen again, right? So I think it's a good approach to take, and I don't like when these topics become taboo or are not talked about, because I think you cannot just hide something under the rock, and you cannot just forget about what happened in the past. So I like that approach that Germany takes. But I also feel, I mean, from the outside at least, I also feel like maybe that affected a lot in the way that the German people feel about, for example, like patriotism, right? Like I feel like the German people and German persons are not so patriotic, or not so like maybe they're proud of their country, but they don't show it in a way that, for example, if we look at the USA, if we look at some other countries, like France or some other countries that really portray these proud and this pride of being
absolutely. I mean, I think that World War II Nazi, that legacy definitely has shaped Germany still. I mean, there are a lot of words, for example, that you would never use in Germany, even like in other languages. Those words are just used normally, and the words in itself are not evil, but just because the Nazis used them in such a context that you can just never say them again in Germany without people thinking you're a Nazi. And patriotism, obviously. I mean, I think the only time that you can see a German flag in Germany without having people think you're a complete Nazi is during international soccer tournaments, like during World Cups. People put out German flags. I mean, famously, of course, the 2006 World Cup took place in Germany, and it was kind of that moment in history where people, waved their Germany flags, and it did it in a way that I think everybody perceived as friendly patriotism, in a sense, like they were celebrating, but not in any hostile way towards other countries. But it's a very, very tricky subject to navigate. Even when it comes to football, I would say there are people who will see all the flags that are really just out there for football and be like, do we really need that? Really? And there's always a huge debate about singing the national anthem at football games. You will have football players with, a migration background not singing the anthem, and then there are going to be people on one side of this conversation being like, oh, you have to be at least a little proud of Germany if you play for it. And then people on the other side go like, please can we stop singing the national anthem altogether, because what is this? So that is, I think, a very sensitive topic in Germany, patriotism.
But I find it very interesting because any other country maybe doesn't think about it that way. And for example, the US, for the US, is it's even bad if you are not a patriot. Or even in Mexico, it's fine if you are proud of being Mexican. I mean, we don't used to have flags on houses or anything like that, like in the US, for example. But I just find it interesting how here, because of everything that went on in the past, and it's a little bit more silent in that way than that feeling of proudness or pride related to the country. Very interesting. And apart from these chapters that we talked about regarding history, right now, what would you say the main holidays or traditions or important days in Germany are? Because, for example, one of them I know that it's what we talked about, the day when, or the day when maybe not exactly when Germany got reunified, but when it is celebrated,
the contracts.
It's not exactly the fall of the wall, but
right.
It's when it officially.
The wall fell on November 9th, which is a very significant date in German history, because there are a lot of dates throughout, a lot of November 9th throughout history where things happened that were very important. For example, the Republic, the Weimar Republic, was founded on November 9th. And then obviously, shamefully, you had the Nazis putting Jewish synagogues, Jewish shops on fire on November 9th. And then you had the wall falling on November 9th. So a lot of things happened.
So November 9th is an important date
November 9th
for Germany in different senses.
Yeah. November 9th is a very central date because it really captures the shameful and the positive sides of German history. And it's a very complex day, which is, I think, why nobody wanted it to become the national holiday, because it was just too complex for that. And then October 3rd is the day of German reunification, and that's when I think it is when they signed the contracts.
I think it is when it officially came together.
Right.
I actually arrived in Germany in the 3rd of October.
Nice.
Nice. Very important day too.
That is a national holiday. I remember, I think it was the 30th anniversary of German reunification. I was in Berlin, and there was it was 30th anniversary of the wall falling. I'm not entirely sure. And there was a celebration at the Brandenburg Gate. Obviously, in Berlin, reunification is very important because, I'm from the very West, and you have to acknowledge that there's not such a deep understanding of former East Germany, and it's not such a big deal simply because we don't think about it that much, because we feel probably it doesn't affect us. But then if you go more to the east of Germany, you will feel that it's still a thing. Not as much, obviously, but
you can still see and feel some differences.
There are some, in the architecture, you can see some differences. And I think it shows you just what an intense time it was for Eastern Germany as well. Here in Berlin, where you have memorials to the people who drowned in the river while trying to flee East Germany and things like that. And so in Berlin, with the Brandenburg Gate as sort of this symbol for both reunification and freedom, it's a bigger deal, I would say. But otherwise, it's a day where people don't have to go to school and don't have to go to work. And that's what they really appreciate about it.
Just have some rest.
Right. And it's not like anything big is going on, actually. Like,
there's not like a big celebration.
It's
like
not like July 4th in the US
Yeah.
at all. It's pretty much just you get the day
Yes,
off,
I
and
guess.
that's that. It used to be June 17th.
And that's why the main street in Berlin, like
Right,
the Parliament is
right,
called that way.
right. Because there was a protest, demonstration, resistance, whatever, in Eastern Germany on June 17th. And so Western Germany had its national holiday on June 17th to pay respect to that. And yeah, some people say that was so much better because that was in the summer. And so you had a day off in the summer.
But the summer's not so bad yet, right? You can still have some nice-ish weather.
Yeah, but so this is actually, well, it's not the only holiday that is free like everywhere in Germany. Where, you always have Christmas and Easter. So pretty much you can say that in like Germany very much follows Christian holidays. If there's a Christian holiday, you'll get the day off. But yeah, I don't know if we have that big celebrations.
And what about some other traditions? Like, for example, you were telling me about the Oktoberfest, which is the tradition that comes from Bayern. It's not really like celebrated throughout all Germany. At least it wasn't celebrated originally. Maybe now because of tourism and some other things. It's also like a marketing strategy. But like, do you know where that comes from, or is it like actually that important for like the German people in Bayern, or is it mainly like a touristy attraction?
To be fair, I think it is a Bayern thing. So it is a traditionally Bayern thing. And then it just, I don't know, foreigners apparently thought that's particularly crazy or fun or whatever. And so it became a big tourist thing, but...
Especially in Munich, right? Like, that's the big one.
I mean, Munich, yes. But to be fair, like, Munich does traditionally have that Oktoberfest. So I've never been, so I'm not really qualified to talk about that. You are correct, obviously, that like in other cities there are, they're putting on some kind of Oktoberfest as well, but I don't think it can be at all compared to Oktoberfest in Munich. And it's scope
that the real one is in Munich.
Yeah, and everywhere else in Germany, I think it is tourism. I mean, not necessarily just tourism from abroad, but also just, I don't know, people in Germany like enjoying that tourist attraction. But it's not a tradition in Germany in general. It's just a tradition in Bavaria. So yeah, that's a big thing, I would say. Otherwise, what else? What kind of traditions do we have? I mean, obviously, Christmas.
I'm impressed by Christmas. Like, you really like Christmas.
We really like Christmas.
And your Christmas markets, I think, probably are the German Christmas markets are the most impressive. Like, I'm gonna stop there because you're gonna feel like proud of them.
No, we have some of the most beautiful Christmas markets
especially
in the
one in Aachen that I haven't been.
Yes, in Aachen, Bayern.
I bet it's one of the best ones.
I think Dresden, Nuremberg, Bavaria has a lot of beautiful ones. Yeah, we really do love Christmas, and we celebrate by having Christmas markets, and those are very cute. And we have our, I think, famous mulled wine, hot red wine, basically with spices. That's really, really awesome. And
it feels like a warm hug. It's like the taste of Christmas.
Yeah, it is the taste of Christmas. It tastes like Christmas. Yeah. And I'm obviously completely unbiased, but that's really the best in the world.
No competition, no.
So Christmas markets are a big thing. And then we have a kind of odd tradition. I don't know if it's odd, but it's a traditional German dish to have on Christmas. First of all, we celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And I mean, you also celebrate on Christmas Day on the 25th and on the 26th, but like the actual day where you celebrate and where you get the gifts and so is the 24th. And the very traditional thing to do is to have potato salad on Christmas Eve. Potato salad with sausages, obviously, in Germany. So yeah, that's a very non-fancy dinner, I feel like. I don't know, Thanksgiving in the US and is like very fancy, sort of.
Like you have the turkey, and you have the pumpkin pie, and you have like a lot of different things. Right?
Yeah.
And here it's like more.
In Germany, you have potatoes,
and sausages and bread.
Of course.
I think it's like a good time to visit Germany, even if it's like very cold. But I'm really enjoying I have been here like since last winter, so I had already seen some of that. But I think last winter was a little bit different because it was like COVID. And some of the Christmas markets weren't like that crowded or weren't like how they are supposed to be. And this year, I think, it's like going full with all of the power of the Christmas.
If you don't have
markets.
Christmas markets, like there is really no use at all to have a winter.
That's the only. I think probably that's why they started doing them, right? You needed something to be like happy.
Winters in Germany are just hopeless because it's cold, but it's not like if you're in Scandinavia and you have like snow, it at least looks beautiful. And I don't know, you can go skiing and do their what else, all these things that people in Scandinavia do to celebrate the winter or at least enjoy it. And you can't do that in Germany, but at the same time, it's just freezing cold and not nice either.
So you're not the biggest fan of winter and the cold weather. I mean, I know that, but well, good to know. And then talking about because we were already talking a little bit about like the Christmas dinner and about food, like in general, like not in any specific date, like why do you think the beer part of the German cuisine is so important? Like, or why is this such a big thing in Germany? Like, the beer industry and all these, because I think at least from Mexico, like if you think of German beer, you probably think like it's probably like the best in the world, and like probably the German people are like the ones that drink the most beer, which I think it's always like in the top 3. But like some other countries also have these high intakes of like beer and this kind of beverage, right? So why do you think it is so like close to the culture and so normal to think about beer?
That is
think about Germany.
A very good question, actually. I don't know why beer is so important. I mean, Germans are just to a certain degree obsessed with their beer. I think that's fair to say. There are laws governing how to make beer and like what qualifies as beer and what doesn't. So I think maybe that makes it all taste relatively similar. Like I think if you compare it to other beers in other countries, they can taste maybe wildly different. I think beer is, I don't know, it's like this thing that you drink, especially men, more, it's also the stereotype that women don't drink beer. And I don't, so yeah.
You're part of that.
I confirm that stereotype. But like a lot of people drink it in the summer, they're doing barbecues. I don't know, I think it fits this Germany not being fancy thing, because beer is not very fancy. It's alcohol, but it's non-fancy alcohol. Like other people, like in Italy, you have these fancy, classy wine and aperitif and what else, and Germany just has beer. Yes, I don't know, and it's like I think
it's also like I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's also like I feel like it's not just Because in some other countries, maybe beer is something that you just drink because you want to get drunk or you just want to party or something like that. But I feel like here it's just like something social, something like part of the culture, right? Like it's not that you're gonna drink like 10 beers. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm having my sausages and my potato salad. I might have a beer too. So
that's actually...
or we can go to a park and then just be there and have a beer because it's legal here.
That's actually the point that I was getting to. That people don't really think of having a beer as getting drunk. I mean, obviously, if you have a lot of beers and if you have a bad combination of beer and wine and whatever, you might get drunk. But it's not like if you really want to get drunk, you're not going to have beer. Beer is more of a, I don't know, you're having a barbecue, a picnic, a get-together, like something going on, watching soccer, and you have a beer. Yeah, I think it's this, I don't know, it's so on the line between this is not actually heavy drinking, but at the same time it's a little bit of drinking, which makes it, I don't know, grown up and and obviously you're allowed.
It's like an excuse to go out with some friends or just have a chat with something, really doing something maybe.
And of course you are allowed to drink it by the time you're 16 in Germany. So
so it's like another, like a different legal age, right? In some other countries it's 18 or even 21 in the US and some other parts of the world. So here from a very young age, I mean, most people start at that age, maybe in some other countries too, but illegally, right? And illegally, and here it's completely legal to do so.
At 16 it's completely legal, and I think everybody in Germany tried beer before they're 16, and it's not a big deal. Like, I'm not even sure, maybe you are allowed to drink from an early age if your parents permit it, and I think most parents are
like with the approval of a grown-up.
Go for it. And there's also a non-alcoholic beer that is still very much beer, and people will start drinking, or at least try that at a very young age. So
very interesting. So Jazz, maybe the last part of this, I would like to ask you, what will 3 maybe recommendations be for someone who wanted to come to Germany or maybe get to know a little bit more about the German culture? Like, what would you recommend if somebody wanted to come to Germany? This can be like related to food, related to like your favorite places in Germany, like favorite cities. I mean, I know that Aachen might probably be one of them. But what would you say someone who wants to visit Germany or wants to get to know a little bit more about the country should do, should visit, should eat, should drink, should whatever?
I mean, you have to try beer when you're in Germany. You are not going to like it, probably. Who likes it? But like, you have, like, if you want, you should probably try it. If you're here for Christmas, seriously try mulled wine. It's very German.
That's your favorite.
Very good, unlike beer. Then, I mean, sausages, probably a German thing. There are even vegetarian options in Berlin. You're gonna find vegan sausages.
Because you are like the counterpart of a German stereotype, because you are vegetarian and you don't drink beer, right? I like that. You're breaking all those stereotypes.
I'm breaking all the norms.
See, we can see that not all stereotypes are that way.
So, but do that. I would say I really recommend ice cream.
Ice cream. I didn't know that.
There's a particular ice cream that's called spaghetti ice. I don't know. I never knew that it wasn't a thing outside of Germany, but I think most people outside of Germany haven't heard about it. But it's probably the most prominent ice cream in Germany. It's vanilla ice cream. I mean, I think like, it's, what's the word, cream, like this, whipped cream. I'm not entirely sure if it's whipped cream. Whipped cream, maybe. It's like the, is like the first layer of it, and then you have vanilla ice cream. But that's where the name comes from. The ice cream goes through a machine, so it looks like spaghetti. So it looks like a spaghetti meal, and then you have strawberry sauce And that's a real deal breaker. Sometimes it can be really bad, but if it's really good, it's just amazing.
Wow.
I mean, it's amazing how the whipped cream just freezes from the ice cream above it. That's really nice. And then you have that strawberry ice cream, and then you have a white chocolate on top of it, like cheese, like Parmesan on top of spaghetti. That is really, really
I didn't even know that. I'm gonna have to try it.
See,
probably next summer, probably not right now. But
I mean, totally, you can get it from any ice cream parlor, 100%. So that's something that you should try.
And maybe a place?
A place? Definitely visit Berlin. I mean, we're biased because we're in Berlin right now. But
best city in Europe.
It is the best city. It's not representative of Germany as a whole, but you should still visit it because it's absolutely cool. And it teaches you a lot about Germany. It teaches you a lot about German history. It gives you an idea of, East and West, and that growing together. It gives you such an idea of how Berlin is a place where so many people come together. And you can learn so much about any stage of history of Germany in Berlin. So in that sense, I think it does help to understand Germany. But then you should also go to a different place in Germany where it's more like, because in Berlin everyone speaks English. Yeah. And I mean, that's probably nice for tourists, but if you want to get more of a German experience, go probably just to, I would say, either go to the west of Germany, like Aachen. No, don't go. Actually, Aachen is a very, very small town. You probably don't want to go there, but like Cologne and the surrounding area, because there are so many cities there that you can really see a lot and do a lot, but it's still kind of not that big city crazy international life that you got in Berlin. So that's, and yeah, it's so diverse. Also diverse history with like people from other countries coming to Germany, mostly coming to that place to work. And then I would probably also recommend going to Bavaria.
Without the pain of your hard work, you have to recommend it.
Yeah, but I have to probably you should probably go. They have very nice landscape, very nice nature. There are very nice castles. So just like I would say, go to Berlin to have that crazy big city, wow, it's awesome experience. But that's very like cosmopolitan and international, and at the same time, learn about culture and history in Germany. Then maybe go to another city, maybe in the West.
To actually experience it. Because here you can learn about Germany, but maybe not see like a real representation.
That is a very good way to put it. You can learn about it intellectually, but you maybe don't experience it. And then experience that in the West or in any other smaller city. And then if you want to have a bit of nature and beautiful castles and nature, then go to Bavaria.
Well, perfect. Thanks for that. I don't know if there's something else that you would like to add, or do we cover all the main topics regarding Germany? And you don't have to add anything. I'm just asking if there's something else. If not, then thank you very much for your time.
I don't know. I think we've covered most of it.
I mean, Germany has a lot of history, has a lot of culture. Of course, there are a lot of things. We can even have maybe a second episode in the future, but as of now, I think
obviously there would be a lot more to talk about, but I think we covered the main points, and the main takeaway hopefully is it's interesting. It's more diverse than you might think, and hopefully people are interested in the world around them, and we are too, and we would love to have many different people here.
That's a great way to end it. Then thank you very much. Thank you also to everybody who watched or listened to this episode. And see you next time.
Bye.
See you soon.